Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dunja, for the presentation, introduction, and invitation. So I'm very honored to be here to speak about this highly important topic, which occupies us as an Academy of Sciences on a daily basis. I've been allowed to speak in English. I hope this is fine for everyone. You're very welcome to intervene in French. I do understand and can also answer in French if you like. Good. Good. The topic of today's event, so how public engagement, what impact public engagement of science has on its credibility, of its integrity, as I said, from our point of view is of highest relevance. It's an issue with a very high topicality, and I think it's really important to strengthen the discourse on this issue. So we really appreciate this event here, and I think there must be more of these events also beyond, the scientific community where this discourse is actually taking place. So as a member of the office of the Swiss Academy of Science, I try to bring in today a bit of the practitioner's view. So it's a national science platform. We do coordinate, science and scientists at the interface between science, society, and politics. So we're really an actor in this area, and in that sense, we do embrace public engagement as an activity. But at the same time, we're exactly aware of these risks that we are discussing, especially in current times where they're highly, very polarized topic in the public discourse. So we also have to find strategies and guidelines on this. And an argument I would like to elaborate today is that there is really, so it's not only my view, my personal view, there is also evidence on this. So there is a lack of role awareness that science, the role that science has in society. So there is a very well-established social norm, it has been mentioned by my predecessor, of the pure scientist with a neutral view, with a high objectivity. And this somehow is very difficult to uptake in current times. And I think what we need is a strong reflection on role diversity the science and scientists have in society or in the political system, and have a strong reflection on that. So, and with this, I quickly give you a structure of my talk. So we'll quickly introduce who we are, so what the academies do. I'm not sure everyone is aware of our institution. I will do this very shortly. And then I will share some thoughts and reflections from our institution on what it means and what the challenges are of acting at this science policy society interface, which is actually part of our basic mandate. And then in a third part, I will elaborate a bit our current practices and guiding principles. Just to say that up front, we do not have any magic toolbox that guides us, science and scientists, in the public dialogue. But there are some reflections and some reference documents and some key examples I can share with us. And I must also admit that we, in this sense, are also in a reflection process and understanding the position and the role of scientists in this context. Maybe 3 disclaimers also upfront that appear important to me, especially also when listening to my predecessor. So first of all, so what we mean by public engagement and value orientation is very much also rooted in disciplinary norm. So it differs from discipline to discipline. So there's a strong difference between humanities, engineering science, and natural sciences, and how this is done and what the culture is. So in my examples, I'm relating a bit closer to the natural science areas. This is what our academy covers. Then secondly, there is also, of course, an important differentiation between public engagement of scientists as private individuals or as citizens protected by basic right, of course, and acting or public engaging as a scientist providing expertise or representing an institution. I'm totally aware that there is an overlap of these two areas, but in our day-to-day experience, we rather relate to the second one. So when scientists engage publicly as scientists with their expertise. And last, what do we mean by public engagement? So in our understanding, it's the case when science and scientists bring in their scientific expertise to support or influence policy making or public discourse in a way or another. So science-based policy advice or engaging in a discourse through media and social media. So it's this sort of science to policy activity in the next few slides. So you may have had a broader definition before, but this is just what frames a bit my talk today. Good. Very quickly, I said I will quickly introduce who we are. So I represent the Swiss Academy of Sciences, Natural Sciences. We are part of an alliance of five academies. We provide a national platform for the scientific community, try to identify topics of common interest for different institutions and different disciplines and bring it together as an umbrella organization of sciences. So, and with the Academy of Natural Science, we're arguably hosting some of the topics which are most exposed in the public discourse currently, such as biodiversity, climate, etc. So we have an office of around 60 collaborators, but our backbone is a community of elected researchers of around 400 members that work in different so-called working groups, scientific commissions that support our activities and our products. That's the way we work, and as I said it before, public engagement or public dialogue, making science relevant for politics and the society is part of our core mandate and is part of our strategy, which is also rooted in the Federal Act of Research and Innovation. So it's really part of our job to look into this and reflect on these activities. If we look at the SSENAT, so the Swiss Academy of Sciences specifically, so we understand our role at this interface in the public discourse in Switzerland on science in three ways. But we cannot, in the end, you cannot look at these three pillars separately, as there is a sort of continuum. But we are at the interface within the scientific community, between different institutions, between different disciplines, where we foster the dialogue between these actors through joint infrastructure development or events. But we also represent Swiss researchers over different disciplines in international communities at important science policy interfaces such as the IPCC and IPBES, and we also interact directly with politicians and policymakers in Switzerland. So we have mandates with the Swiss government, but we also have dialogue formats with the Swiss Parliament. And some of you have also been involved in these activities. We have also product-oriented way of producing, policy public relevant documents. So we identify relevant knowledge for decision makers and prepare it in the form of fact sheets and reports and disseminate it to the public. And we also have regional societies that interact really with society at large. So this is a bit the spectrum we are working on, and I think the question of public engagement is concerning rather the green and yellow part of our activities. So that's what we do and how we work in a nutshell. So now let me share some basic thought on what is or would like to summarize the current situation in the field of public engagement. And maybe a key word that comes to mind is the trade-off that comes with the science policy society dialogue. So on the one hand, it is highly necessary to engage, to making science relevant for society and politics. Engagement is crucial. We know that this is a well-established fact. But on the other hand, through this dialogue orientation and engagement, you also risk to lose reputation, credibility, and also in some cases there will be hot debates, if not attacks on scientific on scientists and scientific findings. And so, what is complicating the current the current engagement of scientists, and that's definitely one of the main driving forces are the sustainability challenges, we can name it, or polycrisis setting we are currently in, that call for more involvement. So there's well known that this sort of problems and also policy targets we have established regarding sustainability on climate, biodiversity, etc., they call on stronger collaboration between scientists with other stakeholders. And why is that? So we do need to understand end users, stakeholders, to identify the most urgent research questions and be able to generate actionable results. So we know that since a long time from transdisciplinary research, from transformative research, but it becomes increasingly important as these issues are with us. So with this in mind, it is really, really challenging to uphold the role of the so-called pure scientist. And of course, the public engagement goes beyond the very traditional linear way of thinking that just knowledge is transferred from one area to the others, but it requires a certain degree of engagement. And I think this is not only the academies that state that, it's also an international document, so it's a well-established fact. And of course, and that's the point, that the trade-off, this comes at a specific price. And this is also what in a way brings us together, the community, and also triggers the discussions we're having today. So this is just one example. I guess you have also discussed that several times, but I think one of the key areas, key topics, or illustrative topics in this field, of course, is the climate policy, climate science. So since more than 30 years, we have well-established processes to generate consolidated scientific evidence that also forms, policy targets at international level. Yet at the same time, we know that measures are not ambitious enough to reach these targets. So this fact, this difference between what we know and what we actually do has, made researchers, scientists leave their comfort zone and move more actively in the public area, which is, I think, a natural reflex. And at the same time, it triggers a discussion. I think these are the examples we really have to reflect on. And of course, what is problematic, and I think Dunja have also told me that it has been discussed this morning, at the moment there's a very strong polarization, meaning that what we see or what the public sees are the most spectacular cases, the loud voices, and I think there's a strong need also to understand the nuances in the discourse, the voices that are less spectacular and less loud, that give us more insight on what these roles of scientists in the public dialogue are. Good. So these are just some very loose thoughts on what challenges us at this science policy society interface. And I said at the beginning that the way we think about roles is crucial, and there needs to be more role awareness and more clarity and acceptance that there is role diversity in scientific work. And I'm not a sociologist, and this is a very simplified way to look at it. There's tons of literature on roles and science the role of science in society, but this is a good way to frame my next argument. That's why I'm using it, and it shows a bit the boundaries of how we can think about it. And first, maybe if you look at the right side, that's the more classical way we think about the science and policy or science society interfaces, when knowledge is brokered, meaning that knowledge is produced by scientists and then by a boundary organization and by certain rules is brokered into the other, in the societal or into the political systems. And we as an institution, as an academy, very often understand our role as a boundary organization. And we very often have to uphold the so-called honest broker situation in order to have a credible voice in the political dialogue. Because that is an easy way to understand. So this important separation that has been told before by Virginie, that in politics you take the decision, and from the science side you generate knowledge and show options based best available evidence. So this is one way we think about it. But at the other side, there is also very a strong need and also very established lines in research where knowledge is permeable, where knowledge is co-created between scientists and society, where society and stakeholders participate in knowledge generation. That means that scientists also move in non-academic areas with different roles, and in the roles of moderators and facilitators in order to better understand what the important research questions are, for example, in sustainability transformation. And this is also part of the reality, and I think this is all usually or is typically also confusing in the public discourse, and role awareness is therefore a key issue. So let me now, in the last part, give you some spotlights on activities from our side that are relevant for public engagement, and that we currently also use to discuss the issue. So first of all, scientific integrity is a key element. So we have elaborated a codex 2 years ago to establish common understanding and provide guidance for scientists in research and teaching. And of course, everything scientists and science does shall refer to scientific integrity, where we establish basic principles that I will not go into detail now, but it relates to reliability, the quality of teaching and research, or to honesty, which is more the transparency of research, respect towards not only students and co-workers, but also towards the society. So everything we do in public engagement, to some extent, relates implicitly to scientific integrity. So this is a common answer also we give when we are asked about cases of public engagement and specific scientists. But the problem here is that it does not explicitly refer to public engagement. It's not very helpful and explicit on this. And maybe just let me show you one important document that has been established this year by ETH Zurich, which is a guideline which brings together integrity issues, basic right issues, and guides research at ETH Zurich on science policy engagement, which is an important document and very explicit on exactly this topic. So it's not our document, but I think it's a useful document that complements a codex on scientific integrity. So the second area where we have to think on our activities about public engagement is everything we do on this science policy interface. So we do this, we have different formats and product with the aim, to maximize the uptake of scientific findings in the Swiss policy process. So we do different things there, and as I said it before, here we act as a boundary organization, and we provide a space for scientists to interact with policies, with politicians and policymakers, and it is important here to uphold this role separation in a very clear way. So we usually work here with this honest broker format where we have to make sure that there is no conflict of interest, where we have to make sure that scientists are not policy prescriptive. Only in that way we can ensure that science is also heard, even by the whole political spectrum. I think this is very important, and we have also very clear guidelines of this. We organize, for example, so-called dialogue events with the parliament, and there we make sure that scientists are well briefed on these roles, on the role separation, on the way we outline scientific evidence without being prescriptive, etc. We also have publications which bring together or consolidate scientific evidence on very current political issues, such as, for example, as short-lived substances and its climate effects. And we are aware that these documents or these findings are used in the policy processes. For example, initiatives from the Parliament. So we also make sure here that we are not policy prescriptive, but we show that we generate policy relevant scientific evidence that then can be used and discussed. We also have a quality assurance process of that to make sure that this has a character of honest knowledge broker activities. And last, we're also involved in building up a improved crisis management of the federal government, but I will not go into detail here. I just show you that we have instruments to do this. If you go into policy dialogue, we have a quality assurance system, we have a code of practice, and this is all available online. And last, and I think, as I said, it is important for us to kind of act as a boundary organization, but we also are aware that there is more that needs to be done in the science policy interaction, coming to co-creation, where, as I said, there is a need for engagement and more interaction between science and policy, where an example we have just, a project we have just finished is a catalog of criteria where we established together with stakeholders criteria to plan renewable energy infrastructure in alpine areas, so ground-mounted systems, in a way that minimizes impacts on biodiversity and landscapes. And this is not just a scientific basis, but this has been elaborated and co-created with the stakeholders from environmental organizations, energy producers, etc. So here we really are in this agora, in this interactive space where we engage with the public, and we cannot uphold, again, a pure knowledge broker role. And to reflect on this, to encourage, so we embrace the fact that this sort of research is necessary, but to also allow researchers to reflect on this, we provide tools to go through these role models and to discuss it in the institutions. And we have a web page on this. I forgot to post the QR code. We will also publish a guideline on how this can be done. And this exactly the point is to raise awareness on different roles that science and research play in the public dialogue. Good. Just in a nutshell, so collaboration between scientists and stakeholders is crucial, especially when it comes to sustainable transformations. And this is challenging a bit this role reflection and differentiation between the two areas. So, and this public exposure on the one hand is an advantage because it creates public awareness on the importance of science, but it also raises the risk of public criticism. And for that, I think to mitigate that risk, the loss in credibility or scientific integrity, is important to foster this reflection on different roles. And there are different roles science and scientists play in society and in politics. And here we try to foster this dialogue orientation, and we would like to contribute to role reflection and guidance on this. And I'm very happy, if you're interested, to give you more information and details on what we do. But thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Filippo, for the talk. Yeah, you can stay. Maybe we have questions. I have a first one. You speak about the importance of the reflection on the different roles that scientists can have. Do you think the same scientist can have different roles depending on what the topic is about and which is the context, etc.? But do you think the public makes a difference between these different roles, or do the public stick to, if you had one role one time, you have the etiquette somehow?
Yeah, I think this is an important point. This reflection, first of all, I think has to start in the scientific community itself. Even there, I think it's complicated and it's not clear, and role awareness is limited. And then when it goes beyond and how it is perceived, then I think we have to think about expectations of the public regarding sciences, and then it really becomes complicated. And I think this is exactly one of the challenges that these models, I think, are not really fit for communication. It's still very complex, but and when it boils down to individuals and persons, then it becomes even more complicated to differentiate. I think this will be a major communicative challenge, and but in a way or another, it has also to enter the public discourse. Yeah.
Thank you. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions dans la salle? Vous pouvez aussi poser des questions en français. Filippo vous répondra en anglais, mais, ou peut-être même en français. En tout cas, il comprend très bien le français. C'était clair pour tout le monde?
Thank you for the presentation. I have a question about the role of academies in terms of dialogue as themselves, because you're insisting on the fact that it should be a two-way communication. Is there any plan at the Senate level to maybe also involve as members or parts of the reflection other players than scientists? For example, as at the Swiss Academy of Engineering Sciences, you have members who are part of the civil society, not scientists by themselves. Is there such plans at the Senate level, for example, involving public from associations, policymakers who could be involved in some way?
Yeah. So in our strategic boards of the thematic commissions, we have different representatives from government agencies, for example, that are represented to bring in their voice. We have very close ties to different civil organizations as well. We frequently exchange with them, but they are not structurally involved. That's a point. It's always a discussion. And I think that's the reflection process also we are in on what is science. So, and I think an important issue, for example, is also representing not only research and teaching, but also third space activities of institutions, and giving them a stronger voice in our institution. I think we're on the way, but there is also much that can be done in this area. But we also must make sure that we are representative for the scientific community. So if we dilute it, to use that word too much, then we also lose this representativity.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I would like to know a bit more about the question of the risk of public criticism, because this morning we talked about that especially. Can you tell us a bit more about your reflection, analysis, or about this specific point? So, which kind of risk, and which, if you consider the analysis that we discussed this morning about the credibility, but do you, especially for your institution, do you have a specific reflection, guidelines, or whatever that you want to deliver to us? Thank you.
Yeah. So maybe I'll answer the last question first. So no, we don't have a guideline on that. We observe that in the public discourse, when I use criticism, I also refer to the fact that voices are getting more aggressive, debates are getting hotter in a sense. So there is more strategic use of particular knowledge, for example, in policy processes, where some aspects of scientific evidence is picked out of context and used. There are initiatives in the parliament to criticize researchers that are more exposed. There's also the media that take up particular cases and discourses or discussions between researchers that are taking place at different altitudes. So this is a bit a collection of things that we observe and on which we also get asked, as you know, as a public institution where we have to answer. But no, we don't have guidelines on how to handle this. First of all, we try to refer, of course, to scientific integrity, and then to differentiate case by case.
Peut-être une dernière question. Merci.
I will push a little bit more on this. There are some potentially good or acceptable public forms of public criticism, right? That can advance science or make it more robust or more useful, whatever. So I think, can you agree with this? Or as
yes.
Okay,
I agree with this. Yeah.
How and who how can we differentiate what is a risk of public criticism and some good public criticism, and who is in a position to make this distinction?
Yeah. I think so. The risk refers, to losing in the public opinion credibility, and acceptance. So in this case, we consider it as a risk. So when it is undermined the credibility of science, it is good when it fosters discussion and expands perspectives and brings in more disciplines and challenges, particular views that have not been reflected in a multidisciplinary way. So does that? Yeah. But that's how we perceived it. We consider it a risk when we feel the need, to defend credibility and integrity of science. When, for example, there are disputes, disputes are made visible in the public, which from a scientific point of view maybe are not even very relevant, but strategically, for public attention or politically are very relevant and are taken up and then influence public opinion on science. So these are the risks. But there is a form of public criticism that increases also the development and advancement of science. That's clear. But yeah, we don't have clear principle and guidance on this. I can't provide a more structured answer. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Due to the time, I think we will thank you very much for your intervention.